In this section, I'm going to talk about rendering, and I'm going to show you something that I seem to do a lot of these days, which is using the batch processor to resample an entire series of audio files. I'm going to come over to the New button, and I'm going to choose Batch Processor, and then you have a choice of several templates. I'm going to call up the full multi-core empty template because that will use all of the cores on my computer to make the batch process run a lot faster, and I'll show you how to configure that in just a moment. But let's say that we had a whole series of audio files that were in one sample frequency and we need to convert them to a different sample frequency. For that, we would need to run the Resampler plugin. So on the left-hand side of the screen are where you'll find your plugin processes, and they'll go from top to bottom. And when we load some files, they'll appear in this window. But let's go ahead and add the Resampler. So I'll click on the plus button right here. That will open up the Master Section Plugins window, and I'm going to go into the Steinberg folder and then look for the Mastering folder, and in that I'll find the Resampler plugin. I'll double-click on that to load it into the batch processor, and then to program it, you just double-click on it. If you have presets saved, they'll be here, but what I'll want to do is take a series of 44.1 kilohertz files and make them all 48 kilohertz. So I'll just choose that sample frequency here, and the quality I'm going to set as the best quality. The resampler is a pretty fast process anyway, so why not set it to the best possible resampling quality? Then I'll close that, and I think the easiest way to drag a bunch of files into the program is just to do it from either File Explorer on Windows or from the Mac OS. So I'll take this file and this final file. That will be 66 files. So you can imagine if you would have to resample 66 files one by one, that would take an awful lot of time. But then I'll drag them over into the second part of the window, or the right-hand side of the window. And so now we have the process that we're going to apply to each one of these audio files. But then there's some things that we'll need to do to get them placed in the right position and also renamed if we want them to. So let's look at the bottom of the batch processor list. On the Output tab, we can choose where they're going to be saved. Let's make a new folder. So I'm going to choose the explicit path option, and then I'm going to use the browse feature right here to select the destination folder. And let's just go into this folder, make a new folder called 48K so that we know where to find those, and click on Open. You'll now see that the output destination in the batch processor reflects that change of destination. Then you could choose to rename the files. I'm going to leave that alone, but there are some options here if you wanted to change the naming of the newly created 48 kilohertz files. Then in the Format section, I can choose what file type and in what bit depth and sample frequency I want to save these. Right now, the file format is set to Wave Default, but let's click on the Preset button and edit this single format. I'm going to make sure that the sample rate is set to 48 kilohertz. Normally, it will match the input stream, but since the resampler is going to be changing the sample frequency of the input stream files, in other words, the original files, I'll want to make sure that this is set to 48 kilohertz. Then I'll click on OK. There's a few options here that you can choose to do or not. You can have it create the GPK files automatically, but I'm going to turn that off. And if there are markers in the original files, you can choose to retain those markers or not. I'll go ahead and click on Copy Markers. I don't think any of these files have markers, but just in case, I'll leave that on. Then on the right-hand side of the window, there are a couple of tabs. I'm going to leave the Comment tab empty. But for the execution page, I'm going to choose all the cores of my computer. But actually, right now, I'm not going to choose all cores. Instead, I'm going to click on that and choose all cores but 2, so that my Mac OS has 1 core reserved for itself, plus my screen capture software that I'm recording my computer with has another core all to itself. So I'll do all the cores but 2. Then I just come over to the top of the editor and click on Start. Then while that's running, I'm going to come up to my Tasks tab, and I'm going to see our progress here. So you can imagine, again, how long it would take to do all of those files one by one. But we're getting pretty close to done. Oh, and now we're done. So when we go back out to our Finder, here's the 48K folder, and they're all done. And they've added the marker files for each one of those files. So by using the batch processor, you can make quick work of applying the like processing to a whole series of audio files. And we can confirm that these audio files are absolutely 48 kilohertz. So that's batch processing. Next, let's talk about CD text and metadata.